Hey, kids, fancy meeting you here. It's the Matt Murphy radio show underway for another day on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Conveniently enough, my name is Matt Murphy, and I have a gathering to get to for about 3 hours or so. We'd love for you to stay for the full amount. If you're here for 5 minutes of the full 3, we appreciate you. We'll hand off to The Drive and Brian Wilson at that time. It's episode 660 of our proceedings today on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's also Locks for Trump Day 208. That's right. For 208 days, since March 1st of this year, I've made a commitment that I'm growing out my hair until we have a new president-elect ready to go, ready to head to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue this next January. I shall do so I started this when there was a possibility of old Joe Biden, who was on The View yesterday. Was it yesterday? It feels like 3 days ago. Maybe it was yesterday. Joe Biden was on The View and making a fool of himself. We'll get into that a little bit more in depth. Joe Biden actually said on The View yesterday, let me just give you the Cliff Notes version, because I know nobody watches, because I've seen the ratings. Joe Biden actually said on The View yesterday that he could have beaten Donald Trump had he stayed in the race. So let me get this straight. The guy that decided that his performance was so bad and that the numbers looked so bad, the guy that, quote unquote, decided, if we believe him, that he would step aside in the 2024 race, says that he would have beaten the guy that he quit to had he continued the race. This is very similar in fashion, not to bring up football, because we're not a football show. But this would be like, I don't know, the Oklahoma Sooners saying, we're not going to play the game anymore against Auburn because we don't want to play the game anymore against Auburn, so we'll forfeit the game and let someone else play, the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Well, it's because we were so successful the week before.
Because we've been so successful in the past, and we know that we can beat them, so why should we even go down to Auburn, Alabama, and try? Hey, Ken, how are you?
Doing good, Brother Murphy.
What's going on in your world over there?
Just writing up news, getting the very latest on Hurricane Helene.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to ask you this question, because I have not done my due diligence and looked as to where we are. Do you have an assessment as to whenabouts we're making landfall on the Florida coast?
I do. Here is the latest. Hurricane Helene is expected to strengthen to a Cat 3 with 120-mile-per-hour winds by 8 o'clock tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Then make landfall about 2 hours later, just southeast of Tallahassee.
And just go, a beeline up through the state of Georgia? And then
just, right up Georgia, right along the Alabama-Georgia line. The Carolinas are going to get a lot of this. Mm-hmm. And East Tennessee is, and even Nashville is going to get the residuals too.
I think
it's going to be like I think it's going to be a tropical depression here in Nashville.
I have to say, I don't wish what is about to happen to the Florida coast on the Florida coast, obviously. I mean, we don't wish these types of hurricanes to happen to anyone.
No.
However, I think we in Nashville, Tennessee, and the surrounding Middle Tennessee area, I think we might get the best side of this, in as much as we're going to get a lot of rain. I think we're getting some rain, right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to get a lot of rain.
And maybe a little bit of wind, but nothing dangerous in nature, it's my understanding.
We don't think.
And that's good.
We don't think.
And we need some rain. So for those here's the bottom line, folks. What's that song say? Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayer. Well, sometimes when you pray, your prayers are answered in ways that you don't expect. So for all of us, and I've been among you, praying for a little rain, well, here comes some rain.
Yeah.
In the form of a tropical depression by the time it gets to the state of Tennessee. So there you go. We'll look forward to those updates all afternoon long and all week long. We'll be with you. I don't think you're going to need us over the weekend in terms of inclement weather, because by the time it gets to us, it'll be 20-mile-an-hour winds, 30-mile-an-hour winds, whatnot. But we're praying for our friends down on the Florida coast. I just learned this, Ken, like 3 years ago. I guess it was the last time that a hurricane came in that neck of the woods. I live in Georgia all my life, in Thompson, O-P-N Thompson, Thomson, Thompson, Georgia, all my life. I went to school in Carrollton, Georgia, which is just on the Alabama-Georgia line. Mm-hmm. I lived in Montgomery and Birmingham, Alabama, and for the first time in my life, like a year ago, I learned the phrase, the Big Bend.
Yeah.
Have you ever, that's where the Panhandle meets the the dongle of Florida.
Right. I never knew there was a Big Bend in Florida until I heard that term during one of the hurricanes.
Yeah. It's going to hit the Big Bend like we know what is that? That isn't Tampa, right? I mean, I don't know. Big Bend.
It's over there where the Big Bend is in Florida.
Man, I went down there. Remember, I think this was hurricane, and someone on the super text line can correct me. I believe it was Michael. Several years ago that hit Mexico Beach, Florida. Mm-hmm. A dead-on hit. Hit Panama City, did some destruction in Panama City. Well, the wife and I, years ago, went down. We had a pre-scheduled visit to Panama City, and this was like 6 months after the hurricane had hit. And we said, well, let's drive down the coast and see if, you can still see where the hurricane went. Oh, my goodness. The entire town of Mexico Beach was leveled, Ken, absolutely leveled. And there was a little general store open. And it was seemingly the only thing open at that time. And I said, we need to go in and buy some stuff.
Right.
Because we need to give these folks money. They obviously are going to need all the money they can get. We walk into this little general store, and I start talking to the lady, and I said, well, we want to buy a few things from you. They, hats and shirts and, soda pop and whatnot. And she said, well, thank you so much for doing that. It's our first day open. I'm like, what? She said, yeah, we just reopened today. I said, is anything else open? She said, no, we just got electricity back like 3 weeks ago. And I started talking to her about it, and she said, yeah, a lot of people are paying attention to Panama City, not so much to Mexico Beach. I said, what happened here? And she said, we were leveled. The only building on the beach side, away from the road, and I forget what the road name is, but the only building on the beach side that remained standing was this building that a guy had built like 3 years prior, and he built it to Cat 5 hurricane strength. And he was known in the community because it sounds like I'm making this up. I'm not making this up. This is what she told me. She said everybody picked on him because he paid $500,000 more for all of this high-level hurricane strength windows, hurricane strength foundation, Category 5 level wind, construction. And everybody was like, when is he going to need that?
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's the last man standing.
All of a sudden he needed it.
All of a sudden, everybody's coming over to his house, knocking on his door. Well, anyway.
It's kind of like what you said. You said something during that big winter storm we had to start the year. When everybody's out driving around and everything, you said something that stuck with me. You said, everything's all right until it's not.
Everything's fine until it's not. It's all smiles and rainbows until the power goes out.
That's right.
No, I used to pick on Alabama Power when I lived in Birmingham. Their slogan was always on.
Right.
And I would regularly pick on. I was like, look, I don't have anything against Alabama Power. Obviously, we all need electricity, but this slogan, this is false advertising. You're not always on. I told them that they needed to change the advertisement to always on until the lights go out.
Yeah.
Alabama Power, always on until the lights are out.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, everything's fine until it's not.
Yep.
I mean, it's like that little, you see that meme with the dog in the hat, and he's drinking a cup of coffee, and everything's on fire around him, and he says, this is fine. Yeah. Everything's fine. So, yeah, I mean, everything is fine until it's not fine, and then when the poop goes down, you better be ready for it. Well, I hope they're ready for it on the Gulf Coast, so we're thinking about those folks down there.
Yeah, it's gonna be a doozy.
Sammy, I have a question for you. While we're talking about this hurricane, do you feel comfortable? We established yesterday that Sammy, who is training with Bell K, I don't know why she lowers herself to be around radio ragamuffins, but she has done so.
It doesn't plug.
She has forgotten to plug it. So what she get? Okay, well we can.
She's ready, boss.
Shaking it up here, boss. That's pretty funny. And
I like her already.
Don't go rabbit on me. We're shaking the bush here, boss. He took all the keys. I'm sorry. That's just random Cool Hand Luke reference.
That's Cool Hand Luke right there.
That's right. That's a little Cool Hand Luke. Come on, safety pin. So Sammy's ready for us. You got your headphones on?
I got my headphones on now.
Can you hear me
We're good.
now?
I can hear you.
Say
This
hey
is
to
great.
Ken. Ken's right behind you. Say
Hey,
to
Ken. How you doing back there?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Sammy is doing a little training with us, learning the ins and outs of the board. How's things going so far?
Pretty good. Today
Yeah.
was my first day that Bell really threw me in, and I love that he threw me in because that's the best way you learn.
Yeah, that's right.
So I didn't realize I was starting the show, and so it's been really good. I feel like we're off to a great start other than the headphones.
Off to a roaring start. You said yesterday you have a place on the beach?
It's not on the beach. It's in Orlando, so in Florida. But the power went out overnight. Right now, it's okay. They said I have tenants that live in it, and they said it's not supposed to get too bad in Orlando until this afternoon. And the main concern is tornadoes spiraling up and more severe weather. The last hurricane, there's a Florida room on the back of it, and that flooded. And there's a lake in the neighborhood, and that's really what causes a lot of the flooding that we have in that area. So that's the hopes, is that room doesn't flood again.
Fingers crossed?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, we're crossing our fingers, too. We'll continue to give us an update about Sammy's place.
I will.
In Orlando, Florida.
I appreciate you asking.
We're thinking about the property down there. All right, so we'll continue to update you on the weather all afternoon long as we continue Libertarian Lunch on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is, I mentioned Thursday, September 26th. You probably know that by now. I want to remind you that we have a big watch party coming up on October 1st. We're very excited about it. It's in Hop Springs, or at Hop Springs, I should say, in Murfreesboro. If you attended the last event, it was big fun. The last time we were down there was on the June 27th debate watch party, and what a fun time we had. Not just because of the outcome of the debate. We had a good time before. We will celebrate. It all starts at 3 o'clock. Brian Wilson will crank his show up the drive. The entire gang will descend upon the stage around 6 o'clock, and we'll talk you up to the debate at 8 o'clock. In the evening, it will be J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz, vice presidential debate, which takes on, in my mind, a little more significance and a little more importance in as much as we don't expect that there will be another presidential debate. Just one from Biden, he got dispatched of, one with Trump and Kamala. And, you know, it doesn't seem like Trump or really Kamala wants to have another debate anytime before November 5th. So this might be it. We're excited that Fox Nation has decided to join us. They will be broadcasting from Hop Springs in Murfreesboro as well. If you went down last time, or if you've ever been, we'll be on the stage side where the big screen broadcasting the debate will be. Fox Nation, it's my understanding, will be in the VIP section on the other side of the room. So we'll kind of be anchoring either end of that long room with the big long bar in the center. So we look forward to seeing you. A good time will be had by most, if not all. Starts at 3 with Brian Wilson in the drive. The entire gang at 6. We'll watch the debate at 8. Apparently, Fox Nation wants me on their television afterwards. I don't know why that is. They told me it was 2 or 3 minutes, and now it's become 30 minutes, and I don't know. I feel compelled to tell them why my hair looks like this. I just do. I don't know that I will do that, and I don't know that I will know what to do with my hands. One way or the other, we'll be there, and we would love to see you as well. There'll be food trucks. It's brought to you by GlockStore, amongst others, and I don't have a list in front of me, so I apologize for that. So it is, we're all about it. October 1st, this coming Tuesday, big watch party. Is that right? Tuesday? Is it this coming? It is. 30 days have September, April, June, and November.
That's right. That's right. It's Tuesday.
Man, oh man, less than a week away. Very excited about it. And I know Ken Weaver's excited about it because he doesn't have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I know,
the next
man.
day.
I'm going to be there.
Yes.
I'm going. I always go to things in the borough.
Oh, well, yeah, you got to support the borough.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? Speaking of supporting our hometown, there was an event that was coming to the city of Mount Juliet this weekend. And I know we've been talking about it quite a bit on the radio station, and that event has been postponed. It was a City of Mount Juliet event at Charlie Daniels Park that we were all going to be there. I know I was going to be there. I think Brian was doing a show from there. This was this coming Friday, tomorrow, matter of fact. It has been postponed until October 11th because of the possibility of wind and rain and remnants of Hurricane Helene. So just wanted to make you aware of that. 21 after the hour. When we return, we'll break down Kamala's big-time hardball interview with MSNBC. I got that out with a straight face. We'll tell you all about it coming up in just a moment. Plus, the guy who quit the 2024 race now says that he would have beat the guy that he quit to, but he quit anyway. What's that all about? We'll break it down next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I get to talking about U.S. Pest, J.K. and Erica Brister, their ownership, the way that they manage their company, the good that they do in Middle Tennessee. And I lose sight of something that I need to remind you of. If you are a U.S. Pest customer and you refer a neighbor, a friend, or a family member, did you know that you'll receive a credit on your account of $50 or a free mosquito, tick, and flea treatment from U.S. Pest? That is correct. They just want to grow their business and to make sure that everyone is protected with pest control through U.S. Pest, and I want to do the same thing. I mean, it's the bottom line that pests are creepy, they're communists, they don't pay for what they use, they want to eat your food, they want to enjoy the warm spaces inside of your home, and they don't want you to do anything about it. They want you to keep away. You know, the pests don't like pest control because they don't like to be controlled. Well, we need to get them under control. Plus, they bring diseases with them, not just the rodents, but the insects as well. Let's manage this by calling U.S. Pest. Go to uspest.com to find out their various services. They obviously have full-service pest control, termite protection, and crawl-space service available for you. uspest.com. That's uspest.com, or give them a call today. 590-1260. 615-590-1260. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the best, to U.S. Pest.
We are tracking Hurricane Helene and what the impacts might be on Middle Tennessee afterward. And right now in our nation's capital, we've got the first task force hearing, this task force investigating the Trump assassination attempts. Hear from the first hearing coming up at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Looking forward to that. Ken Weaver, thank you so much. It's 12:26, Libertarian Lunch ongoing on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I also, at some point today, have a Sylacauga, Alabama update for you. Sylacauga, Alabama is another location where we've seen a tremendous influx of primarily Haitian immigrants into their community. It has not gotten the conversation that Springfield, Ohio has gotten, but it merits it. And the people of Alabama are concerned. The citizens of Sylacauga are concerned and confused, and lawmakers have no answers. We've had these discussions in the state of Tennessee, and many of you, like me, share your concerns with the influx of illegal immigration and whether or not something can be done from a local or state perspective. And I would suggest to you that I understand your frustration. I understand why you would say, why aren't more local lawmakers doing something about this? But at the same time, there is only so much that they can do about it. Yes, we can cover the honeypot so the bees go away. We can smoke out the bees and get them away from the honeypot and shut down operations. And what I mean by that is take away the business opportunities that are available for illegal alien labor to want to come here. That's what I mean when I say the honeypot. But outside of enforcing those laws already in place and making sure that we do so with an aggressiveness, I don't necessarily know that we have that aggressiveness right now. Many of you want, I know I won't say it that way. There is a desire for something magical to happen within the state of Tennessee, that we somehow close our borders to these issues that we see in other parts of the country. And while the states have authority to handle a lot of the business that sadly the federal government has chosen to take over, one of the things the states cannot do and do not have permission to do from a constitutional standpoint is to protect the borders of our nations, the border of our nation, southern, northern, or the coast areas. And until and unless we get those things handled, we will not be able to handle these other things. And sadly, we have a federal government that is not working any longer in concert with the states. They're working against the desires of the states, especially states that want to manage our sovereignty through enforcing our borders. Texas, Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Ohio, and yeah, right here in the state of Tennessee. So I'll give you a little bit of an update coming up on that. Because many state officials went to Sylacauga. I don't know about Springfield, Ohio, but state officials went to Sylacauga trying to get answers. And the only thing that you can do is reject the federal money that would ultimately encourage this type of behavior or activity. And I know in Alabama, the Lieutenant Governor, Will Ainsworth, a guy that I know quite well, has released a letter that he sent to U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, calling on him to halt the Cuba, Haitian, Nicaragua, Venezuela parole program, the CHNV, which is why they're coming to Alabama, which is why they're going to Springfield, Ohio, which is the real story behind all of this. One of the frustrations I had with the whole cat and dog story, I don't for a second believe that this isn't happening. In other words, that's a double negative, proof positive that I believe it. So I understand that there is evidence present that you see Haitian migrants coming in and bringing their cultures with them, and whether that means they're eating dogs or eating cats or eating pets or whatever. But that in and of itself is a side story to the real problem, and that is the federal government of the United States of America through the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela parole program. They are flooding the zone with individuals from these countries. More on that coming up during the Libertarian Lunchtime Hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN Plus. As promised, I have clips from the Kamala Harris hardball interview with MSNBC and Stephanie Ruhle. That's on the way on Super Talk.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. We're tracking Hurricane Helene, expected to strengthen to a Cat 3 with 120-mile-per-hour winds by 8 o'clock tonight, then make landfall about 2 hours later just southeast of Tallahassee. A swift water rescue team from Tennessee is in Florida to help with Hurricane Helene search and rescues and recovery wherever and whenever needed. Right now in our nation's capital, Democratic Colorado Congressman Jason Crow's opening remarks during the first bipartisan task force investigating the Trump assassination attempts hearing.
We must be united in our belief as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats, that political disagreement is settled through rigorous debate, not violence.
Elsewhere in Washington, D.C., Stephen Portnoy.
The Ukrainian president met with senators from both parties, seeking their support for strikes deep inside Russia. South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said he agrees with Volodymyr Zelensky.
If he could start executing that plan, that gives us the best hope of ending this war in 2025.
But Graham's fellow Republicans are increasingly accusing Zelensky of election interference, pointing to his recent trip to a munitions factory in Pennsylvania without Republicans in tow.
What happened in Pennsylvania was a mistake.
And Vladimir Putin is warning what President Zelensky wants could lead him to use tactical nuclear weapons. We have new numbers on the U.S. economy. Here's Derek Dennis.
Bolstered by strong consumer spending, the nation's gross domestic product grew by 3% in the second quarter of the year, a faster pace than analysts had expected. The GDP measures the market value of all goods and services produced in the country and is often a barometer for economic health. The growth is also notable with regard to the pandemic, showing a 5.5% second quarter increase from 2020 through 2023, indicating the U.S. economy has bounced back in stronger shape than predicted.
That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hello, friends. Matt Murphy for Defend Systems. Defend Systems is here for you. Brink Fiddler is here for you. Gloria, Tracy, the rest of the team, they want to talk with you. If you're a business owner, if you're a decision maker at a school or at a church, any place that people gather, I understand that you don't want to contemplate the possibility of violence erupting in your place of business, in your school or in your church. And I'm here to tell you that that possibility is low. There's no question about it. While we see these things happening on a daily basis on our television screens, that does not mean that it is not a low-level possibility of workplace violence, an active shooter situation happening at your place of business. However, that number's not zero, which is why hope is not a plan. I say it all the time. It is time to get trained with Defend Systems. They offer active shooter and physical security consultation for a dangerously developing world. They're a life safety and security consultation firm, and they're based right here. They've helped schools. They've helped churches. They've helped traveling shows. They've helped country music artists. They've helped businesses like yours. Are you next? I want you to be. I want you to get a consultation today by calling this number, 615-236-6484. Let's make sure that we have a plan of action in place in the unlikely event that we see violence erupt at our doorstep. 615-236-6484 or defendsystems.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A very special guest in the 1 o'clock hour. I'm excited about this. We're going to give you an update on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah, two terrorist organizations that have determined to kill all of the Israeli people and all of the Jewish people in that region of the world. There are reports of the possibility of a 21-day ceasefire, which Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has dismissed, saying that that is not happening. Friends, you cannot have a ceasefire without the release of the hostages. And it's as simple as that. Until and unless everything starts with the release of the hostages, nothing else matters. Israel, for those who have not heard, because the mainstream media will not highlight it, much to my chagrin, I mean, it infuriates me that we live in this world. Y'all know that Israel granted every aspect of the ceasefire like 4 months ago. The one that the Biden administration tried to negotiate. Most aspects of this leaned toward Hamas. The only thing that kept the ceasefire from happening was Hamas refused to release the hostages. Up front, unilaterally. Because they think that's their big bargaining chip. There are Americans who remain in captivity. Do we not care? Do we not care that Americans have been held for almost a year now? I mean, even if you don't have humanity toward the Israeli people, have you no humanity toward American citizens? Well, we have a very special guest coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, and thanks to our good friend Aaron Gulbranson with the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, Aaron brings to us, and I might be mangling her name, and I apologize if that's the case, Ashrit Sabag, and I'll correct myself if necessary, but Ashrit Sabag is a resident of an area of Israel that's about 700 meters from the border of Gaza. On October 7th, Ashrit was in her safe room for 18 hours with her husband, her 2 children, and a dog. Ashrit has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Sapir College in computer science. She has a teaching certificate from the Open University, has a master's in the history of the Middle East and Africa from Tel Aviv University, and she's been teaching at a regional high school over there. She's obviously married and has 2 children, and she will be in studio with us in the 1 o'clock hour to talk about her experience during that day and what we can do to help ease the tension in the Middle East and ultimately to lead to Israeli success. That's in the 1 o'clock hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Very excited about that. 6961 says, come on, man, you know the Biden administration don't care about the Americans. All they care about are these bleeping illegal aliens. It feels that way. Brian, yes, I said meters only because that's the way that it was described to me. It was put in that way in the biography of Ashrit Sabag that I received from Aaron, and so I just used meters. Meters translated to, I mean, you can do the math yourself, Brian. You're a smart person. You're the smartest listening audience on planet Earth. You can meters translated to yards, yards to feet, feet to inches, you know. And 3887 says, release the sausages. It's a very funny clip. It's not so funny in the context of realizing there are actual human beings that have been held in captivity for almost a year. And I'm not trying to pour cold water on that joke, but it is a funny clip. If you did not hear the Chris Hand show today, apparently there was some Brit calling for the release of the sausages. He meant hostages. He accidentally said sausages, and it's very funny. 615-737-9986. Am I actually going to say it's boo? Is that right? Boo? I'm saying boo. I feel like a grown man when I say this. Hey, boo. In Santa Fe. I know, if you're in New Mexico, it's Santa Fe. But if you're in the state of Tennessee, it's Santa Fe. Is that right, boo?
Yes, sir, it is.
What's up, man?
Hey, Brother Murph. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Hey, what I'd like to say is about our immigration system that I hear no one talking about, man, is what is required of these immigrants to go through it officially to become a U.S. citizen. And I'm sure we could reach out to old Daniel Suarez up there in Nashville, Tennessee. He could tell us. But a few things I know for sure is they have to learn U.S. history. They also have to learn our Constitution, and most importantly, pledge allegiance to our flag. What's so wrong with going through it legally?
Well, and when you go through, all of the people that I've had the opportunity to speak with over the many, many years that I've been doing this radio show, Boo, I have found, and, some might take exception with this, and I'm sure that there are exceptions that prove the rule, that generally speaking, people that come from other nations that have experienced what other countries are like and then get an opportunity to go through the immigration process legally and learn about the United States of America and appreciate the United States of America, these are some of the most patriotic Americans that I've ever met in my life.
Absolutely, brother. I'm spot on with you on that. I just wanted to point it out, and you never hear any politicians talk about the requirements of it, but it would seem to me that anybody wanting to move here would love to do those things, such as, like I say, learning your U.S. history, your Constitution, and pledge allegiance to our flag. Man, it's a lovely country, and why not? And I would say most of the reason is there's some reason holding them back. I don't know if it's money or if it's their actual backgrounds, the reason they don't want to go through it legally. But, brother, I appreciate you taking my call.
Well, thank you, Boo. I appreciate it. From Santa Fe, Tennessee. So a couple of things to unpack there on the immigration front. Several of you, as I was giving my monologue regarding immigration, you were talking about the late, great Uncle Phil Valentine and his call to, and I've said it over the years as well, that you have to demagnetize. And the way that you do that is break the bonds between conservatives and Republicans and the Chamber of Commerce that supports them. Sadly, there are many individuals within Republican circles that don't necessarily want to see a change, at least as of about 10 years ago, did not want to see a change in the level of illegal immigration that was coming over the southern border, because that illegal immigration meant profit to them, because that was labor for them, and labor at potentially an even depressed rate than they would normally get it here in the United States of America. We still see that going on. Now, I can't tell you the truth about illegal immigration if I don't tell you that. That for the political left, it's all about votes. They have done the calculus. I've read the hard paper on it. They claim that they can get 7.5 out of every 10. That if they absorb these folks into the American population, they'll never leave. Once they get here, they don't leave. And if you don't believe me, think about what Donald Trump has said about mass deportation and how the political left has reacted to it. They're acting as if Donald Trump is calling on the Nazi cattle cars to be brought back, to take them to slaughter. That's not what we're talking about. There's no such thing as mass deportation. In as much as you come individually, you have to be taken away and go back to your country of origin individually as well. But that's not as easy as it sounds either. But on the political left, they've made the calculation that if they get these people here and they absorb them into the fabric of America and they eventually get them voting rights down the road, that they can take credit and create a new voting bloc for the Democrats. The Democrats are all about identity voting or identity politics. They find these groups, they claim marginalization, they create a boogeyman. In this case, it's Donald Trump. More broadly, it's the Republicans. And then they point fingers. But for that person, but for that group, you'd be doing so much better. Whether it's illegal aliens, whether it's black people, whether it's gay people, any marginalized group, the Democrat has to create these blocks of voters because they don't believe in the individual in the manner that I do or that you do. They have groupthink. And they understand that they cannot continue to rely on some of the block votes that they have previously relied on to guarantee themselves victories in many of these communities, because they have failed from a policy perspective, so many of these communities. And the black voters are seeing through this now. Many of the brown voters are seeing through this now. And in the long term, it's all about the votes. They don't care about the southern border. They never have. And sadly, for far too long, the Republican Party has allowed this to go on too. Right here in the state of Tennessee. When you talk about demagnetizing this state in an effort to prevent illegal immigrants, we can't stop the southern border flood unless we get somebody new in the White House, unless we get some serious-minded people in Washington, D.C. But we could certainly demagnetize Tennessee in the manner that Uncle Phil used to talk about. But in order to do that, you have to go to Tyson Foods and tell them that it's time to shut it down. And you have to expect now, and look, there's going to be consequences. We allowed this to go on for the last 40 years in our country. And if you don't think there's going to be consequences as a result of putting our foot down and putting a stop to it, you're sadly mistaken. It's going to affect your wallet. For far too long, sectors of our economy have depressed wages with illegal labor. I mean, if it's up for me to say it, I'm not afraid to say it. There's way too many construction companies that wink and nod and know exactly what's going on. There's way too many manufacturing companies that do a wink and a nod and know exactly what's going on. There's way too many chicken processing plants around here that know exactly what's going on. They go, hey, we don't hire any illegal. No, we don't do all of that. We're on the up and up. We hire subcontractors, and we don't have anything to do with how they do their hiring. I know what y'all do, man. I know what y'all do. I've talked to way too many general contractors that tell me that the subs that they hire are legal and on above board. Well, yeah, the guy that signs on the dotted line is legal. What about all of his workers? Where are his workers coming from? We know what's going on. Until we put our foots down. Foots. I said, man, it was so good. I was on fire. Sammy, was that good? It was good for a while, wasn't it?
It was good for a while. You had it.
It was fire. And then I said foots.
You might say you got tripped up.
I tripped over my own foots. Look, it's not that hard. Demand of this state that we actually place demands on the actual employees of individuals within this state and lower the threshold to an amount where it is insignificant enough. And whether that's 10 employees, I don't know what the number is necessarily, but you lower that amount to prevent these loopholes that happen within these industries. And these industries all tell me the same thing. Murph, we don't have the labor force. It's going to increase cost. If that's the price of getting this illegal immigration issue under control, then so be it. Because sadly, with the labor force that's coming in, and I believe that we need some of that labor force, and I think we are going to have to repair that, but we have to do that on the other side of shutting down the southern border. In order to do that, you're going to necessarily have to go through the pain of watching prices go up. I mean, that's just basic economics. If my cost of production goes up by X amount, that's basic economics. 51 after the hour. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. More of your calls coming up, plus our very special guest in the 1 o'clock hour. I'm on fire. My feets are on fire. Or my foots on Super Talk. Well, let me tell you this. If you go into your basement and your foots are wet, see what I did there? If you walk into that basement or that crawl space and your foot step on moisture, that's a problem. And I know who can solve it. It's USS, don't make me laugh, Sammy, United Structural Systems, because they solve waterproofing issues in your home. Now, you know the symptoms on the waterfront, right? I mean, if you have a musty smell or an odor coming from your basement or crawl space, if you've noticed moisture in the floor joists of your home, if you get down there in that crawl space area, then those are the telltale signs of your house telling you something. Your house is telling you that moisture is getting in. You gotta eliminate that because waterproofing problems become foundation problems, and foundation problems can get very, very serious very quickly. Let's go ahead and call USS. You can find them online at ussTN.com. That's ussTN.com. Ask yourself why your home is wet, why it's not stable and dry, why the doors are sticking or the windows are sticking in your home. You ask those questions, and if you get the wrong answers, you need to get with USS, United Structural Systems. You can go online.
Bracing for Hurricane Helene, the first hearing of the bipartisan task force investigating the attempts on former President Trump's life, and Metro Police arrest a man who's been exposing himself to women for months. All that and more coming up at 1 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
You promised you wouldn't do this story about my cousin, Ken. I don't appreciate that, but I guess you got to do the news.
I just do the news, Brother Murphy.
I guess so. Well, I'll let you do the story first. Have I told you the story about the guy? I did, about the guy in Slap Out. Yeah, I was naked, but I wasn't peeing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what makes me think of that. So, all right, we've got that coming up in just a moment or two, and we've got a very special guest coming up in the next hour. I'll tell you what, Amy and Diwa and Skip, I'm getting to you. I love you. I thank you for being there, but I'm out of time this hour. We will continue the discussion about immigration because I do believe that these things are interrelated. Any discussion about Israel and the dramatic impact of what's going on in that part of the world, it will impact us in this part of the world if we continue to allow the flood of unknowns to come across our southern border that potentially could do us harm. We'll discuss all of that next hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
One o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We are tracking what Hurricane Helene is going to mean for Middle Tennessee. Tell you about it during the full forecast in 5 minutes. Right now, the Florida Panhandle expecting a direct hit. Storm surge up to 20 feet. It's where Tennessee swiftwater rescue teams are staging to help where and when needed. Victor Oquendo in St. Marks, Florida.
This is shaping up to be an historic hurricane for St. Marks. I just spoke with one neighbor who told me she is petrified and is getting out of town with her family today. They've been through many storms here in 2018. Hurricane Michael brought 10 feet of storm surge, but Helene could double that, up to 20 feet. We are talking about catastrophic storm surge. You combine that with winds gusting between 100 to 115 miles per hour, and the county sheriff is warning that is an unsurvivable event for those along the coast.
Right now in our nation's capital, Colorado Democratic Congressman Jason Crow's opening statements of the first hearing of the task force investigating the assassination attempts against Donald Trump.
This task force has a solemn, urgent responsibility: uncover the failures and help stop them from being repeated. The American people deserve clear answers about what happened on July 13th.
And they're investigating Florida, too. New York City Mayor Eric Adams says he's looking forward to a trial after an indictment was unsealed today charging him with bribery, soliciting improper foreign campaign contributions, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud.
It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day. But inside of all of that, it's a day where we will finally reveal why for 10 months I have gone through this.
Post-pandemic, the U.S. economy appears to have bounced back. The nation's gross domestic product growing by 3% in the second quarter of the year, 5.5% second quarter growth from 2020 to 2023. That's a faster pace than any analyst had expected. Strong consumer spending said to be bolstering the numbers. Google Maps aiming to crack down on businesses that post fake reviews on its platform. Here's Mike Dubusky.
Google now says it's going to temporarily remove or block profiles it suspects post misleading reviews on businesses in Google Maps. It's also planning to put warning labels next to accounts that have had multiple reviews taken down. Users will be able to appeal the decisions. Fake reviews can be used by businesses to look more appealing on Google Maps, but there's also review bombing, a coordinated effort to make a business look worse than it actually is.
And here in Nashville, Metro Police say they arrested a 22-year-old man they say has been exposing himself to women for months. It started July 12th at a Target in Brentwood. Then there was the front of a sorority in August. This man booked into the Metro jail, charged with 1 count of indecent exposure, 2 counts of public indecency, then released on a $1,000 bond. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. I want to spend a moment talking with you about pain. Dr. Gill and the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief can help you alleviate wherever it hurts. It was a time back in the day, some 30, 40 years ago, when Dr. Gill first started his practice in Franklin, that perhaps chiropractic care was thought of spinal in nature. Well, it's grown much beyond that. Soft tissue and spinal issues can be solved at the Dr. Gill Center. So whether it hurts in your back, your neck, your knees, your joints, wherever it might hurt, they can facilitate a pain-free lifestyle without having to worry about taking pills, without having to worry about shots to block the pain, and certainly without having to consider surgery. That's what it's all about. I'm a patient of the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. I encourage you to be so as well. For less than $50, you can get in with a full examination, an initial examination, including x-rays, and a full treatment. Less than $50 if you make the call to 615-882-4838, and you're on your way to a pain-free life. Once again, that number is 615-882-4838, the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. Thank you for being around with us. It's 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock. Should be a very special hour. I mentioned that we had a special guest coming into studio with us, and I've been visiting with our guest over the last several minutes, and this should be a wonderful conversation. I'm very much looking forward to it. If you have any questions over the next 30 to 45 minutes, get them in on the membersnutrition.com super text line. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it, and I'll ask any and all questions that are coming in to our next guest. For the better part of a year now, we have been talking about the brutal attack that occurred on October 7th, 2023. That attack killed some, the numbers vary, but it's roughly around 1,400 individuals on the day of the attack and in the ensuing several days. And we still know that there are hostages that are being held captive by the terrorists that initiated these brutal attacks on the Israeli people almost a year ago. And yet still the fighting continues because the terrorists continue to hold the hostages and to hold certain territories that they ought not have. To speak to this in a very, very personal way, we are pleased. Well, one, I want to thank Aaron Gulbranson with the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's in studio with us, and he facilitated this wonderful conversation that we're about to have. Aaron, welcome in.
And thank you for shining a light on this stuff, Matt. You're a big supporter of Israel, and we appreciate your friendship, as always, on a variety of issues.
Well, how did you, before I introduce our guest, how did you find out that she was coming into town? Did you guys at the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, I imagine that you helped facilitate some of this happening?
Yeah, well, it's very nice when Mac Parnell in Georgia, who's does a lot of work like this over there, and then Tim Head, the national executive director, called me and be like, "Hey, would you guys like to host this? Maybe you can find some ways to highlight your story." And so that's kind of what happens. I mean, as you see, we did an Israel event with the Patricia Heaton's October 7th coalition a few weeks ago. And so anytime there's an opportunity to do this, to highlight the plight of the hostages, the survivors, we absolutely do so. Not only, in my opinion, is it our duty as Christians to stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters, also, frankly, from a pragmatic standpoint, if you don't come at it from a biblical perspective, it's a humanitarian thing. And it's also our strongest ally in the Middle East.
Well, that's right, and that's the order that I would put it in. It's a biblical thing, it's a humanitarian thing, and then if those two things don't matter to you from a geopolitical standpoint, you better embrace the state of Israel, because otherwise the entire region is going to blow up on us. With all of that in mind, we are proud to welcome our guest. I'm going to try this, and I told you that I got it right when we talked the first time, and I'm going to try it. It's Ashrit Sabag.
Yeah, that's
Am I right?
You're right.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
As a way of introduction, tell all of our listening audience where you're from, how long your family's been there. Just give us a sense of who you are and where you were on October 7th, 2023.
Well, I live in Kibbutz Nahal Oz. I'm a mother of 2 children, and I have a husband. We were all together in our house on October 7th. I live in Nahal Oz, which is located about half a mile from the border with Gaza. I lived there for the last 23 years of my life, and we were in our apartment on October 7th. But my family, I'm a Middle Eastern Jew. My family comes from the region. My father's side, many generations in the region of Israel. And I'm second generation of refugees. My mom is a refugee from Libya that was terrorized into Israel. So that's my story in a few seconds.
Give us, is all of your family, your immediate family, are you safe?
Thank God. Thank God. Yes, we are.
Give us, we've heard the stories, we've seen many of the videos, horrific though they may be. Just give us your story. When you became aware of something going on, you say you lived some half a mile away from the border with Gaza?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nahal Oz is located very close to the border with Gaza, to the neighborhood of Sajaiya.
Is it relatively, I don't mean to interrupt you, but up until October 7th, how long had you been there, and did you feel relatively safe considering your proximity?
Okay, so this is very interesting because it has deteriorated over the years. I arrived there in my 20s. They had plenty of young people there. The rent was fair, and they said I could bring my dog.
In your 20s, so you were there about 5 years ago then.
Yeah, that's nice. You're my new friend. So it was, but then I wasn't a mother yet. There were rocket attacks already, but they were sort of something that you could, that's mistake number one, that you could sort of live with, because nobody needs to live with rocket attacks. But it has deteriorated throughout the years. I was still not a mother, which is a huge game changer. Okay, so I've lived there for a few years, and we've been through escalation that you won't believe. If it started from, mortar bombs, it came to booby-trapped balloons and burning kites and very heavy artillery and laser-guided anti-tank missile and terror attack tunnels and all kinds of different threats.
I don't mean to date you, but when you say you moved, was this before? I know Hamas took over. They've long held military or terroristic control of the Gaza Strip, but they took over political control. I believe it was 2006. Was this prior to that you originally moved there?
Yes, I moved there in 2002. It started in 2001, the rocket attacks. In 2006, Hamas won the majority of seats in their parliament. And then 2007, they took the Gaza Strip by force, okay? They drove the PLO out and they took the Gaza Strip by force. That was after the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza in 2005. And those years are very, the great change of escalation started then. Okay, in those years.
Because sadly, and I've been saying it for a long time, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that the level of humanitarian aid that, many might be giving some of this humanitarian aid, quote unquote, to the Palestinian people in good faith. But sadly, since 2006 and 2007, that aid has largely gone to building an evil infrastructure, in my opinion, that is designed to protect Hamas against retaliation and to hide Hamas underneath the citizenry as they prepare for things like October 7th.
I absolutely agree. We have witnessed things being so close. Firstly, when you're so close, you know the people. You know some of the people. People don't understand this, but there were Palestinians that were working on our kibbutz. We had a friendship relationship with some of them. I had Gazans at my wedding and at my dinner table, and they were very critical of Hamas too, okay, some of them. And so the deterioration that happened was something that you couldn't even, it was nothing that you could foresee coming. And the people of my community are very left-wing. Okay, we have over 90% center-left voters. So when you talk about humanitarian aid, we used to give a lot of humanitarian aid too to the Palestinians, okay? And there are some great Palestinian people, very good ones. And I agree that it is very important to send humanitarian aid. But when you see that the ruler of this place steals from its people. Okay, I'll give you one example. When Israel withdrew, they left greenhouses abundant with fruit and vegetables, and the people of Gaza were told to smash them down. Okay, so if you have a starving population and you have so much food, what are you doing? You're taking the money instead of building, hanneries and crops and all the things you need. You go and put billions into terror attack tunnels, and that is mind-blowing.
So on October 7th, walk us through your experience. And I hate to ask you to do this because it has to be, just a horrific day, considering how we know how many Israelis died that day. But just walk us through your experience.
It was a very difficult day. 6:30 a.m., we woke up, my husband and I, from alarms and from explosions, very loud explosions. And this is something that is not very rare, in Israel. So what we did was to run to our safe room. In Nahal Oz, due to the proximity, every house has a bomb shelter attached to it. One of the bedrooms is a bomb shelter with iron shutters and iron door and everything. And most families keep the children there. That's the bedroom of the children. So my children were there, and my husband and I ran to their room with the dogs, obviously, and closed the door behind us. We were sure, like the same story, 10 minutes and it's over. But there was something very different that day. Because one thing was that, when Hamas wants to fool around or just hassle you, they will launch rockets to the outskirts of the kibbutz, like the crop fields and things like that. But when they mean business, they will launch them to the neighborhoods where people live. And that day it was very close, and it was just massive. It was unstoppable. And it took us about half an hour, I believe, to understand that this was a completely different thing going on. Yeah.
So how long were you in the shelter with your husband, your kids, your dogs?
20 hours. We were evacuated around 2 a.m. But we couldn't stay all day long in the shelter because my son is handicapped. And, when people needed to relieve themselves, they found creative ways, but he must have his accessible toilet.
Sure.
So we had a few times that we had to go out of the safe room, which was very, very frightening.
During this time, could you hear boots on the ground? Could you hear people in the streets? Were you aware that this was more of an invasionary force rather than just rockets coming over?
Well, it happened in stages, okay, the understanding, because I live right at the center of the kibbutz. The attack started from the outskirts. They came in from the back gate and from the front gate. So they came to my neighborhood, but it took them longer. What we could hear was very serious battles, noises, they were they came to the kibbutz with RPG rockets and things that are very easily, you can hear. Well, actually, a month after October 7th, for a month, all I could hear in my head were gunshots, like a battlefield sound. One day I was jumping out of my seat to look around and see a woman walking with a stroller on pebbles, and I heard gunshots. So it was all day long for 20 hours. And we knew what was going on because people from the neighborhoods that are closer to the gates and were attacked first wrote messages on our group, on our WhatsApp group. So we knew what was going on.
Was there any point, and by the way, our guest is Ashrit Sabag. She is an Israeli citizen with us in the States to tell her story and to draw some further awareness to the continued plight of the Israeli people, particularly the hostages. Was there a point, and this is a difficult question to ask, was there a point that you worried that you wouldn't survive? Was that a concern for you?
Sure. Yes. There were points in the day, for example, around noon, Hamas had GoPro cameras and they live streamed the whole thing. And they did it in the most vicious way, which was to live stream. Let's say they attacked a certain family. So they live streamed what they were doing to them on the family's own social media. So their friends and families could see it while it was happening. So when we turned our social media on, And we saw neighbors that were 4 houses away from me, 4 or 5 houses away from me, that were held by terrorists, and we saw people injured, and we heard that people were murdered. We heard a 12-year-old girl asking, but why did you kill her? She was just a child. And we didn't know if she was referring to her 15-year-old or an 18-year-old sister. Apparently her 18-year-old was murdered by them. So you could see it as it happened, and it was very close to us. So of course that we were, I cannot describe the terror, really. I cannot. It was awful.
I hesitate to ask, but I think it's important that I think most of our listening audience understands. I think it's important that we don't shy away from it because I think it's important to understand the brutal nature of that day and how it truly was. I know it's been said in the past, but it was Israel's 9/11 in the sense of the number of people that were killed that day. Hold your thought. We'll be back in just a moment. We've got a quick timeout to take. Ashrit Sabag is our guest in studio with us, Israeli citizen who experienced the horrific day of October 7th, 2023. We're almost at a year anniversary. We'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy to talk with you for a moment about efficient heating and cooling. I love Jeff Eddy and efficient heating and cooling. I mean, he's a small company, right? He's got great qualified techs. He's got enough trucks to service anybody and everybody that makes the call. He's not the biggest on the block. He doesn't want to be the biggest on the block. He simply, his goal every single day, and Jeff has told me this from the day that I met him, is that every single person that calls him is completely and 100% satisfied with the work that they do. I trust him and his crew that'll get it done time and time again. So if you have trouble with your air conditioner, and I know we're still running those ACs, if it's not running the way that it should, you need to go ahead and call Jeff Eddy. And I've been telling you for a while now, it's about to get cool. And if you have a heater and you've not maintained that heater, I mean, you go to the dentist, right? You check your teeth, you check your car from time to time, get that oil changed. You need to check that heater too, once a year. It's less than $125 to get a complete checkup with Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Let him do this, and it'll run more efficiently over this wintertime months. They're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. When the time comes, they can help you transition over to Rheem, and they invite you to do that. Find out more by going to efficienthvac.net or call 615-784-4424, 784-4424 for Efficient.
Tennessee crews staging in Florida to help after Hurricane Helene, and Trump assassination investigation task force holds its first hearing. You'll hear from that at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Ken Weaver from the Super Talk 99.7 WTN News Closet Central. We've got Sammy behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as possible, and I appreciate Sammy. Bell K capably interfering over there in the corner of the room. 127, I have a very special guest in studio with us, and thanks to Erin Gulbranson for bringing this to the Middle Tennessee community. Her name is Ashrit Sabag. She is an Israeli citizen. She was less than half a mile away from Gaza at the moment of the attacks as they began on October 7th. And I want to finish up with the day. I don't want to belabor it because I don't think we need to belabor it. We know the horrific nature of what happened that day. When did you just walk us through how you discovered the totality of the event that happened? I imagine that there was a lot of chaos. I imagine, I can't imagine because I would never presume to understand what you went through. But walk us through getting out of the shelter and understanding what had happened and the days that followed.
Well, it is very important to understand that each and every one of us we were locked in our safe rooms, so we didn't know exactly what was going on in the outside world. We had text messages. I'm the leader of education in my kibbutz, so there were a few teenagers that felt comfortable calling me. Some because their parents didn't function very well. There was a lot of horror at the kibbutz that day. There's one story I do want to tell. There was a family that lived right by the front gate, and their 13-year-old son went jogging in the morning. So the mother called the head of our security, who was the sweetest guy, and she said to him, "Listen, you must go get my boy. Go get the boy." And he said, "Don't worry, I'm going." He went. He looked for him. He found him, and he didn't have enough time to bring him back to his family's house. So he put the boy in his own house with his wife and children. As he closed the door behind him to go back to Bethel, he was on the spot, brutally murdered in a way that we couldn't recognize we couldn't identify his body for days. We were sure he was kidnapped. We were hoping, that he was still alive. And the family of that boy was murdered. 2 parents, 2 teenage daughters were brutally murdered. So those 2 people, the mother and the head of security, managed to save that boy just minutes before, they... and it was done in the most vicious way. I mean, they killed an entire family. They went outside. They found a family photo, like on the refrigerator or something, marked an X, and then sat down to eat the family's Shabbat meal instead of them. It was horrific. We figured out that it was different when we were turning the television on, seeing the city of Sderot roaming with terrorists, and they tried to take over the police station. They almost succeeded in it, and we saw it, and we said, and the city of Sderot is like 15 minutes drive from the border. So we said, if this is going on over there, oh my God, what is happening in my community? So we had an idea that this is different, and this was a whole different scale. And then throughout the day, there was a lot of tension. The IDF arrived to my house around 2 p.m. And then we thought that everything was, fine and dandy, and the IDF is here, we're protected. But we were very wrong, because the kibbutz was, in my kibbutz, they were over 120 terrorists at once. And we had at the beginning, till the IDF arrived, 11 combat soldiers that were there by chance, Israeli soldiers, and about 3 of kibbutz members that had weapons with them, because it's very not common to have a weapon in Israel.
Several people on the text line here wanted it. When you say kibbutz, what does that mean?
What's a kibbutz?
Yeah, what is a kibbutz?
A kibbutz, I tend to forget that nobody knows
No, it's
that.
all good. It's all good.
A kibbutz is a small agricultural community. Okay, Israel has a few of those.
Like a neighborhood?
It's not a neighborhood. It's like a small community that functions. It's very social. Like there's like support system between us. It's like big families We are less than 500 people on my kibbutz. Okay, it's like a big family. It's like a community. It's a community that lives together. This is agricultural community, so we have our dairy farm and we have our henneries and we have crop fields, So
what did if you could, well, I'll tell you what, I'm looking at the clock here. We've got bottom of the hour news to go to, and then we'll be back and continue the discussion. If you have any questions for our very special guest, please ask them on the membersnutrition.com super text line at 615-737-9986. Ken Weaver coming up next, and we'll continue the discussion after that on Super Talk.
Great. Do you have questions coming in? People are interested.
Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. Let you know what's in store for Middle Tennessee when Hurricane Helene and the remnants make it here. Right now, a swiftwater rescue team from Tennessee is in Florida to help with Hurricane Helene search and rescues and recovery.
It's a very physically and mentally demanding situation. These are folks that love to help out like this. It's just part of who they are, and they're always ready to go.
That's Jill Bergen with the Williamson County Emergency Management Agency telling News 2 the crew is in the Panhandle area, which is expecting a direct hit. Storm surge up to 20 feet. Right now in our nation's capital, Pennsylvania, Republican Congressman Mike Kelly chairing today's first hearing of the task force investigating the assassination attempts against Donald Trump.
Why in that world would you let former President Trump go out onto that platform if you weren't sure it was secure?
He's talking about Butler, Pennsylvania, and they're also investigating Palm Beach. Right now in Nashville, Metro Police say they arrested a man who's been exposing himself to women for months. The first time was at a Target store on Old Hickory Boulevard in Brentwood, July 12th. The other one in front of a sorority in August. The man was booked into the Metro jail and charged with 1 count of indecent exposure and 2 counts of public indecency, released on a $1,000 bond. New York City Mayor Eric Adams says he's innocent, and the charges against him are part of a political hit. We're talking about bribery, soliciting improper foreign campaign contributions, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Serious charges that expose the mayor to significant prison time if convicted.
My day-to-day will not change. I will continue to do the job for 8.3 million New Yorkers that I was elected to do.
He has suggested the Justice Department's going after him because he's been critical of the way the Biden administration handled the migrant crisis. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, folks, it's Matt Murphy, and I want to talk with you for a moment about the wonderful GlockStore. GlockStore came, I love the backstory, Linda McGill's backstory on GlockStore, because he started his company out in California, and he realized that California not only wasn't very friendly to businesses, but it sure was not friendly to a gun-related business. And so he looked for a place to relocate, and he found it right here in Middle Tennessee, right here in Nashville, and we love him as a result. The GlockStore, they're great at what they do. They're wonderful people. They have a wonderful retail side of things where they can sell you your Second Amendment rights right there in the store. You can also train up. I tell you all the time that owning a gun to protect yourself, to protect your family is one thing. Protecting yourself in a way where you are trained up to understand how and when to use, that is the most important component to all of this. And they do it in their shooting rooms, Never Lane shooting rooms at the GlockStore. And then, of course, I know it's a different side of it, but if you're looking for a corporate gathering, a celebration, a birthday, an anniversary, they've got VIP rooms in the back. And yes, you can do some shooting, some training in the course of that GlockStore party. Find out all of this by going over to theglockstore.com. That's theglockstore.com. By the way, GlockStore is one of our premier sponsors of our big vice presidential debate watch party coming up at Hop Springs in Murfreesboro, and we thank them for that. Go to theglockstore.com, glockstore.com, or shoot270.com.
No, you're very experienced.
An incredible conversation ongoing with Ashrit Sabag, who is an Israeli citizen who was there on the day, October 7th, where, I mean, our modern world certainly changed in so many dramatic ways, and it's an incredible conversation. Our conversation that's happening on air is continuing off air, and I feel like, we've got to stop talking off air so we can share this with everyone, because I asked you a question, and I want to visit that question again because your answer was so powerful. Because the big debate, outside of the crazies, and we have some crazy people on college campuses that I don't think they know what they're saying when they talk about their support of Hamas or their support of God, and then they talk about genocide and all these types of things. I feel like that's born of ignorance and sadly misplaced anger
and bad journalism. Also.
And no question.
Yeah.
But for many people, they wonder when we talk about the Palestinians, how many of those Palestinians are supportive of Hamas versus how many of them are being subjugated by Hamas and live in fear of Hamas. You told me a story, and I want you to revisit it, that in your area of Israel, that your community befriended Palestinians.
Oh, yeah. We live very close to the border, so there are relationships because life is stronger than everything. I had Gazans at my wedding. I had them at my dinner table. We had friends. We had good friends from Gaza, and I'm not the only one. There were plenty of people in my society. My community, and you have to understand that this part of Israel that they attacked is the most left-wing in the country, most humanitarian, thinking vast majority of the people believe in, reaching a solution with the Palestinians, believe in having negotiations with them. Everyone believes that we can...
the most open to relationships.
The most open to, I will give you this fact, above 90% center-left voters on my community, just my community. And but this was very troubling because when we saw the pictures, and it's a bit graphic, I'm sorry, but there were plenty of women that were raped in the most brutal way. And I'm talking about mutilation while raping, and I'm talking about women that their breasts were cut out, things that really, it's very hard for me to even repeat. But when we saw photos, when we saw videos of those naked Israeli girls' bodies that were brought into Gaza, you saw a huge crowd of civilians that are spitting on the bodies and, beating up the bodies, and they had glee in their eyes. And for us, that was very confusing, and that was very,
And these were people in the same communities that you had tried to befriend.
Yeah, some of them, not many people can cross the border, but we had plenty of people that were working at our on our communities, and we had people that we had strong relationships with. So this was very, very confusing. There were also people from Gaza that called their friends in Israel and wanted them to tell them where the army was or things like that. So it will be easier for Hamas to attack them, to attack us. So that was something that was very, very troubling. People that were working on the kibbutz, Gazans that came to work, some of them, a very large part of them, they mapped the different kibbutzim. They had maps. They knew exactly where head of security lives,
so
where's the weaponry.
They're working with you.
Working with us.
And simultaneously, they're feeding information to the terrorists.
Exactly. I remember one day of looking outside my window, and I saw a Palestinian worker looking around to see that nobody's watching him. Now, he couldn't spot me, and he took out his cell phone and he started taking pictures of backyards of my neighbors, and so those kind of things.
Ashrit, does that harden your heart?
Well, look, I will tell you this. I've been, all my life, I believed in being humanitarian. If you'd known me over a week, you'd know that there's not one single racist bone in my body. And I'm not stupid enough to believe that 2 million people were all created the same and they all want to kill me. But there is a huge problem there, and it is apparently a very large percentage of the population in Gaza. What you can think about is that if you think about it, Hamas has been in power for the last 17 or 18 years in Gaza. And, the studying books have changed there, they preach to hatred. And you can find mothers there that their dream is for their child to become a shaheed, like a suicide bomber or something like that. And those are values that I cannot even comprehend. I cannot, understand it.
Are you supportive, and are members of your kibbutz supportive of Benjamin Netanyahu and the way that he has reacted? I mean, in our country, we understand. I mean, I hear, you hear a lot of different thoughts on this, and that we understand that there has to be a response. And some say that the response has gone too far. Some suggest that there are too many civilian deaths. Our American media, I think sadly, they are completely biased in their reporting about what happened to you, what happened to Israel, and how Israel feels like it has to respond in order to continue to exist. What are your thoughts on the response of your prime minister?
I'll tell you this. This is a quite complicated answer to give. Firstly, I don't always agree with my government, okay? And thank God I live in a society that allows me to say that and stay alive. But I had that thought over the years, okay? When you have a democratic country, it doesn't matter who is in power at the moment, which party is in power. But when you have a democratic country trying to negotiate with people that it says in their charter, that they all their goal is to annihilate the state of Israel. So I don't think that it's ever, the blame of the democratic country for not reaching an agreement. About this particular fight right now, I can tell you that I pain for every innocent lives that were taken. But you have to understand that we know that throughout the years, they have been bombing us from schools, from hospitals, from all kind of places. When we had people protesting, by the way, by the border, okay, every Friday we had protests by the border of Gazans. Now, I have all the things in the world that I want to protest about. I can go there and protest against the Gazans, okay? I would never dream of bringing my baby child over there, Mm-hmm. That's something that you wouldn't even think about. So there are plenty of casualties that I hope that we could have avoided. But you have to understand that they are actually, I know that many people find it hard to understand because we live in a totally different society, in a totally different culture probably, but they do use their children as human shields. Mm-hmm. It does happen. And they do use civilians as human shields. Now, when you are saying that there are still Israeli toddlers that are being held hostage. So if a family decides to hide Israeli hostages in their house, I'm terribly sorry, but it's not going to stop us from, looking for our lost children, with all due respect. And
how many hostages do you think? Do we know how many are still?
There are still 101 hostages. I don't know what their situation is. I would love to be very positive and think that they are all well, but that would be, very naive. I hope that we are waiting for them. We're praying for them. It's very important for us to have them back, of course, like every life-loving society. I have to tell you this, when you speak about the response. As I told you before, I'm a Middle Eastern Jew. And if you look at the entire Middle East, people are obsessed with the tiny strip of Israel, but there's a whole bigger story here, yes? If you look at if you broaden your perspective, and you look at the entire Middle East, you will see how many Jews actually fled out of countries in the Middle East. Right now, the only place where I can live is Israel. And even when being limited to the tiny Israel, and Israel is tiny, you can drive through it within like 6 hours, all right? I can't have it. I can't have a haven. I mean, I've been originated in the Middle East, like the vast majority of Israelis. Okay, that's going to be a shock to some of the listeners. But we were not parachuted from Europe. We were there, my family, for generations on generations, for example. And when I live in my house in Nachal Oz, I need this threat to be lifted off my shoulders. The things that we have seen in the last 20 years, I'll give you just 2 examples, okay? One, 2011, a laser-guided anti-tank missile that was launched on our yellow school bus, and a teenager was murdered, okay? Those are things that no society around the world would live with, you know? Or 2008, when they massively bombarded Nachal Oz. Out of the blue it started, and I had a group of children on the way that was coming on a bus. I couldn't get hold of the bus driver because he was driving, so I had to run all the way to the station to accept the children while there was like all hell broke loose, you know? There were like bombs all around me, and I remember only ducking once underneath the dining room and praying a lot. And that just highlights of very tense everyday life, you know, that you need to think about. I mean, your children live in a bomb shelter. Think about it. This threat, and I'm sorry for everyone, I am very humanitarian and I'm very left-wing. This threat has to be lifted, has got to be lifted off my shoulders. I have every right, and nobody's doing me a favor in letting me live in the Middle East. I have every right to be there, and I have every right to have my, you know, haven, to live there peacefully and quietly. And people don't understand it, but if you look at the Middle East, all minorities of the Middle East go through this. If it's the Kurds or the Copts, or look at the Christian minorities in the Middle East, we are all being persecuted and we are all being attacked, constantly attacked. 2014, the Jews and the Yazidis were attacked by extreme, Muslim groups. We had an army, thank God. We lost 100 people. We could protect ourselves. The Yazidis went through a genocide, a real genocide, you know? They went through a genocide. Their daughters and sons were sold to be sex slaves. So, I mean, people just don't get the real picture of the entire Middle East, North Africa.
I'm saddened that we are approaching our time limit. I only have about a minute or so left, but I have two final questions. One, do you follow American politics, and does it concern you how America has responded in the past year and what the future might bring?
The reason I'm here to speak is that I'm very concerned about Western civilization societies. And I speak about the proper ones, you know, not the one that you go and you vote and that's it, we're a democracy, the proper ones. I mean, if there's something that unites us all, is that our forefathers went through the 7 gates of hell to get us the freedom that youth today are taking for granted. You see people walking in your campuses, walking with signs saying globalized intifada. I've lived through 2 intifadas in the past, in Israeli past, and October 7th was also a kind of intifada. Intifada is a violent uprising, is when you take down the army and the police. So when you get to the civilians, there will be no one left to help you. And I think that you cannot ask for something more stupid. You know, there's nothing more stupid than asking for this in your society. And I think that when people go without those signs saying globalized intifada, you should believe them. And I think that I'm very worried about our societies. I don't want to go back to a place where, you know, we don't have the ability to speak so freely about what we think.
And Belle, I know I'm running late, but I got to get 2 more minutes in here. So I actually have 2 more final thoughts. One, the listeners, thousands of listeners right now, what can they do to help?
Well, firstly, there's Moral Hearts Alliance that really works now to get Jews and Christians together, since we share mutual values, and it is very important for us to stick together now. You mentioned the geopolitical, and I mentioned, you know, the Western civilization, and I think that it is very important. So Moral Hearts Alliance, you can go to their website and you can donate there for them to continue working on those amazing relationships. They are doing amazing work. That is very important. And I urge the listeners to spread the stories. Please spread our stories. I think that it is so important to combat the amount of ignorance that is running in the world today. Okay, there was a woman that told me that Jesus was the forefather of the Palestinians. I mean, the ignorance today is unbelievable. It's funny, but it's not.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is fine because you don't know this about me, Ashrit, but I'm a big dog lover, and you mentioned something right at the beginning, and I just want. You said that. What's your dog's name? The one that you were talking about? Brat.
Yeah.
And that when the bombs came down, he covered up your son.
Yeah. My son is handicapped. He cannot walk without his walker. And when the bombardments were massive, they were massive all throughout the day. But there were some points that they were like extra massive. So he jumped on my boy that was on his bed, and he just covered his entire body with his body, and that's dogs for you.
Good boy.
Nothing like dogs. Aren't they so much better than people?
It's an absolute pleasure to spend an hour with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aaron, thank you for bringing this wonderful guest to our table.
It's a privilege.
Aaron, thank you. And I want to say thank you to Faith and Freedom and what you're doing, and that you are cooperating with us. This is so important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashrit Sabag has been with us for the hour, and it's been incredible. We'll podcast it if you missed any moment of it. We'll be back in just a moment.
2:00 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Coming up, we've got the full forecast in 5 minutes. We'll let you know what the remnants of what is Hurricane Helene will be for Middle Tennessee. Right now, I can tell you Dollywood and parts of the Smokies are closed, and a swiftwater rescue team from Tennessee is parked in Florida to be ready when and where needed.
They study this, they practice best practices, and train together for these kinds of situations. So I'm sure the folks down there will be glad to see them roll up.
That's Jill Bergen with the Williamson County Emergency Management Agency telling News 2 this crew is in the Panhandle area, which is expecting a direct hit tonight. Storm surge up to 20 feet. Right now in our nation's capital, Pennsylvania, Republican Congressman Mike Kelly chairing the first hearing of the bipartisan task force investigating the attempts on former President Trump's life.
This tragedy, the very real threat to democracy of our nation, escaped that day. I think we realized it was entirely preventable.
He's referencing Butler there, but this task force is also investigating Florida. And the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, facing federal corruption charges, suggesting that the Justice Department's going after him because he's been critical of the way the Biden administration has handled the migrant crisis. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today when asked about it.
I'm not going to comment on any particular ongoing matter. I'm going to let the DOJ speak to this.
Well, Adams says he's innocent and he's looking forward to a trial to prove it. Here in Nashville, Metro Police say they arrested a 22-year-old man who has been exposing himself to women since July. The first time at a Target store in Brentwood on July 12th. Another time in August outside a sorority house. This man was booked into the Metro jail, charged with 1 count of indecent exposure, 2 counts of public indecency, then released on a $1,000 bond. And in London, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin pushing for a 21-day Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. Details from Tom Rivers.
Lloyd Austin says we now face the risk of an all-out full-scale war, which could be devastating for both sides. As he sees it, a diplomatic solution, not a military one, can still be applied. It's the only way, he says, to ensure that displaced civilians on both sides can finally go back home. Asked whether the U.S. might place limits on its weapon supplies to Israel should it carry out a ground invasion, the secretary did not directly answer.
That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Murphy. Hello, friends. It's Matt Murphy for Men of Valor. What a wonderful hour we've just experienced with Ashrit Sabag, and it's a wonderful opportunity to talk about the power of God himself and the power that manifests itself in our prison systems through Men of Valor. I am so pleased and proud to be a part of the Men of Valor organization. I can't tell you how much it means to me and how much it means to our community. And here's the bottom line. 90% of the men that go into prison are going to get out at some point or another. What type of men do you want coming out of prison? Do you want people of faith? Do you want people that believe in being productive members of our community? Or, sadly, do you want recidivists? Because half of the men that get out offend again, and they go right back into the process. Men of Valor needs volunteers. Men, women, you can help. In their prison system, at their campus, in their aftercare reentry service. They need job partners and Bible study teachers, mentors that can disciple men in their everyday lives. Will you join them? Will you join us in helping save men and creating productive members of our society, and by extension, saving this state a tremendous amount of money? Go to movministry.com. That's movministry.com for Men of Valor. You will do our community and you'll do your heart a great service. movministry.com. All right, the phone lines are now open. We had to shut them down briefly for the interview, and it was not that we weren't able to take them. I made the executive decision. Obviously, many of you offering questions and thoughts and concerns on the membersnutrition.com super text line, and I shared some of those with our previous guest, Ashrit Sabag. But if you have any thoughts about the conversation that we just had, I encourage you to give us a call right now. 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. What an incredible conversation with someone who lived through October 7th, was half a mile away from the point of entry on the Gaza Strip, experienced 20 hours of being inside of a shelter with her husband, 2 children, 1 son handicapped, and her dogs. I think she said her big dog was named Brat, the one that was on top of her handicapped son at one point because of the bombing and the shelling, and just some of the aftermath. My immediate takeaway from this conversation: 1, the uncertainty of living in Israel as to whether or not you will be allowed to survive. Number 2, the fact that this Israeli woman who has every opportunity to have anger in her heart showed none. Who seems to be very frustrated over these terrorists, these individuals that would commit such acts of atrocity, but even more so frustrated about the amount of individuals that were willing to allow it to happen or were helpful in facilitating its execution. As you heard mentioned, there are Palestinians that live in Gaza that are allowed into her kibbutz or community in Israel to work. And they discovered in the aftermath of the October 7th massacre that many of these people were giving not only aid and comfort, but actual detailed information, literally maps, as to how Hamas could get to the families and could slaughter the innocents. She also said something else, and I want to drive the point home. The Israeli people desire to live on a very, very small piece of land. And I understand that land is very important in 3 separate faiths: the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Muslim faith. Regardless of the intimate details of the reactions from a political and military nature of what has to happen with regard to securing Israel, I would suggest to you that there are 2 entities that want to share coexistence in that land. And there's one that don't. There's one entity that doesn't, I should say. And that's I don't want to speak monolithically. That are many, many people within the Muslim faith that do not want the Israeli people to exist on planet Earth. What do you think from the river to the sea, Palestine, it will be free means? It means that we will push Israel and by extension all of the Jewish people into the Mediterranean Sea. It is in their very charter of existence that they destroy the state of Israel and by extension the people of that state. We had a ceasefire on October 6th, 2023. And there was one group that is in the control of the Gaza Strip that broke that ceasefire. And as our guest Ashrit Sabag said so well, she doesn't want to see people die. She doesn't want to see innocent people die. But you also cannot use that as a shield to prevent getting to the people that terrorized your neighborhoods, getting to the people that want to wage eternal war on you and stopping the scourge of that threat. And I bless them for that. I do not believe, and we did not get to it during our conversation, but I'll reiterate it because I've said it many, many times. We can support Israel without putting one boot on the ground. We can support Israel. They do not need our manpower. They need our support. Do they need military armaments? Yes, they need some of that. But they do not need men on the ground. They need support politically, geopolitically, and they will not get it from Democrats. Not anymore. Do you think Kamala Harris will support Ashrit Sabag? Do you think Kamala Harris has her back? She's more worried about illegal aliens entering the country unfettered. 615-737-9986. Now, I've been telling you about, and I just mentioned Men of Valor. What a wonderful organization. I'm proud to be a part of them. Line them up, friends, if you are interested at all. I don't know if you're interested in Tim Tebow. I don't know. I don't know if that has any interest for you. But if you look beyond the fact that Tim Tebow played for the hated orange and blue, and you look to the type of man that Tim Tebow is and what a wonderful and faithful man he is, did you know that he's coming to town? Did you know that he's going to be here on October 1st? Now, obviously, we're going to be out at Hop Springs in Murfreesboro, but if you're interested in going to the Men of Valor event, the fall gala happening October 1st at 5:30 at Rocketown to see Tim Tebow, now's your opportunity to do that. All you have to do, Sammy, listen up. I want the first person to call in and offer you a robust and heartfelt go Dogs. Why are you shaking your head? I think that's fair. I'm giving away the tickets. No? You think that's unfair? You don't think that that's the right way to go?
We call this host's prerogative.
Right, so just give me a go dog. That's all you have to do. Give me a go dogs. I've got 2 tickets to give away to the Men of Valor event. In all sincerity, it is a wonderful, life-changing organization, and this is going to be a wonderful event. I'm saddened that it is on the same night that we have other duties at Hop Springs and Murfreesboro. So our event, their event is packed out, and they've got I don't think any more tables available at Rocketown, but you can win tickets right here at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All you have to do is dial us up. We've got some other tickets to give away later on in the hour, but these we're giving away right now. 615-737-9986. Mr. Jimmy, what is going on, Mr. Jimmy?
Yes, I want to talk about processed foods. You had somebody on there earlier, a doctor or somebody that had something to do with foods, talking about how bad processed foods was for us. I've been in the grocery business.
Mr. Jimmy, was this possibly Chris Hand or Dan Mandis?
No, it was a woman.
I mean, was it possibly Chris or Dan hosting? Was I on the radio when this was happening?
No,
okay. You're teaching me things because I tell me what the story was, Mr. Jimmy.
Well, she said that. Well, what is actually is that health care is not health care anymore. It's disease care. the processed food is so bad that it's killing us.
Well, that's certainly true.
I've been in the grocery business 53 years. When I first started was back in 64. So I've seen the changes in foods a whole lot. This is back in the early 60s.
Mr. Jimmy,
buy banana off the stalk for a nickel.
Can I guess which grocery chain you were a part of?
No, this was a mom and pop store
okay.
when I first started.
I was hoping. Can I tell you which one I was hoping?
1980, I moved to California, and I've always just about most of the time I worked produce. I went to work out in California, in Oregon for Albertsons, cutting meat first. Then I wound up as a produce manager. Then I managed a lot of stores too.
Well, Mr. Jimmy, you're intimately aware of what goes on with those processed foods. I think it was Chris Hand's show where this guest was. I missed the conversation, Mr. Jimmy, so I'm kind of in the dark on it.
Well, I tell you, I went to so many grand openings of new businesses or new factories, food factories and stuff, that after you go to them, you don't want to eat no more.
Wow.
I went to, a long time ago, I went to a Kelly's Food Processing in Kelly's Food Cannery in Jackson, Tennessee. I don't think they exist anymore. And I went to King Cotton in Memphis, out on President's Island. And you wouldn't even want to eat no more after you go through those foods. I went to a Martin's Chicken Pot Pie place. They were the first one that had chicken pot pies.
You ever read a book called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, Mr. Jimmy?
No.
I want to say it was The Jungle, if I'm not mistaken, about, I read it in college. I think it was The Jungle, that he talked about food manufacturing in the 1930s and 1940s and the disgusting nature of it. And so I can understand how it would put you off your food. Mr. Jimmy, I got to run. I'm sorry I can't say more about the conversation, but it was not during my show. So I can't really speak to it. However, I am certain that it was a wonderful and lovely conversation. Mr. Jimmy laying down the law, says 5371. He certainly is. 615-737-9986. If you'd like to lay down the law and talk with us on the Matt Murphy Show, we'd love to hear from you. We will reflect on the conversation that was between Stephanie Ruhle and Kamala Harris. A hard-hitting interview happened last evening on MSNBC. We'll relate it to you next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here for Tennessee Men's Clinic. Tennessee Men's Clinic wants to help you, gentlemen. They have locations in Franklin and right here in Midtown Nashville to help you get right with your energy level. Men, are you feeling run down? Are you feeling low energy? Are you feeling like you just don't have it anymore? Whether it's at the gym or in the bedroom, they can help at Tennessee Men's Clinic. There are reasons why you might feel like this, and it's not just, well, that's the way it goes, old age and all, yuck, yuck, yuck. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Let's get with the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Allow one of their qualified urologists to go over all of the options available for you, to talk to you about what might be causing those low energy levels. Might be T levels, might be something else, and they can assist. Go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com, or go ahead and give them a call. Schedule that appointment today. You'll be happy you did tomorrow. 615-208-9090, 208-9090.
Got a crash. It is on 40 westbound at Fessler's Lane. The left two lanes are blocked. This is a crash with injury, so it could be there for a while. Hurricane Helene is now at major status. We'll tell you about it at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Ken Weaver back there in the newsroom closet. I appreciate him. Appreciate you being here from time to time. I appreciate you. Thank you, whatever time you're able to give us. It is about 2:25 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As promised, going to the telephone lines and laying it down for you for those who missed, and most of you did, if the numbers are any indication, the interview with Kamala Harris and Stephanie Ruhle. Conducting that interview, hard-hitting, no doubt, on MSNBC. We'll share some of that with you in just a moment. Right now, it's Rick's turn in Dixon. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Great.
Got a question. How come... I know there's a law that political candidates are supposed to have equal time on television and radio. So how come on the local stations here, all I see is Kamala Harris commercials?
Because they buy that time.
Well, I know Trump's got a little money in his pocket. What's going on there? Why isn't he? Why don't we see any of his positive stuff?
Equal time restriction, the ones that are left, just according to the FCC, has created these equal time provisions, right? And they don't apply to paid advertising.
I just thought they, by law, had to give equal time to both candidates.
No. They don't have to give in. So you're talking about paid. They don't have to give time to anybody.
Okay.
So if I held, and I understand the confusion, Rick. So if I had a conversation with, for example, Megan Barry, I've tried to get Mark Green on the show from time to time over the last several months, and Mark, his folks won't respond to me anymore for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he's laser focused on the 7th district. I don't know. Whatever. But he's in a congressional battle with the former mayor there of Nashville, Megan Barry. She's the Democrat and he's the Republican. So if I offered Megan Barry an hour on the show and then Mark calls up and says to Bell, hey, I understand that Megan Barry was on the show in conversation with Matt Murphy for an hour. I want equal time. Then we, by law, would be required to offer him equal time. In other words, offer him an opportunity of equitable time on the radio to have a conversation with us. But those laws apply to content. They don't apply to advertising.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you. I guess I'll just have to continue listening to word salad all the time.
Well, I don't. I hate that. But every time I hear it, it makes me giggle. But So where are you seeing? I guess the Kamala ads. I've seen them on sports channels a couple of times over the last several weeks. Where are you seeing them?
All right, in the middle of Survivor last night on Channel 5, big long commercial about first showed Trump talking about the dogs and cats being eaten. And then she says, I'm focusing on you, not dogs and cats. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, she's focusing on screwing us. That's for sure. Oh, Rick, it's a great. It's a great point, and I guess there is a little bit of confusion there. There were more stringent restrictions and rules in place with the fairness. It was called the Fairness Doctrine, and it required a lot of equal time provisions unilaterally across the board. And now those have shrunk to political season. And so I won't bore you with the details. I don't know that I could remember them off the top of my head, even if I wanted to. But the restrictions happen prior to elections. The rules are different for primary elections than they are for the general election. And it, generally speaking, our rule of thumb with Bel K and myself is that if I'm going to offer a candidate that's running for office right now an opportunity to be on the show, we ought to be ready to accept any sort of offer from the other candidate. In other words, it is not up to us. We are not required. If we called Mark Green and had Mark Green on the show, we're not required to call Megan Barry and tell her about it. But if she calls us, we are required to offer her equitable time.
I think he's also misconstruing why he's seeing Kamala ads versus why he's not seeing Trump ads, because that money's spent very strategically. And Trump knows he doesn't need to really spend money in Tennessee because the polling shows he's pretty much going to get it.
Correct. I'm just confused why Harris would be wasting money in this state.
That's a really good question, unless it's a PAC that's doing it and trying to make some inroads.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Little bit confusing, but I hope that clears it up for you, and thank you to the caller asking the question. Skip is in Dixon next. Hey, Skip.
Hey, good to talk with you. I just wanted to comment on the hoops that the illegals that want to be legal have to go through. I worked at a company, I won't say the name, but we had about 800 employees. 90% of them were illegals, and the company actually just let them through the door. And I was put on to give presentation to new employees, and I saw a guy out in the audience. I said, "Man, good to see you're back." And he said, "Oh, my name's not this anymore, it's that." And they're a big employer in our area. They actually hired a bank to come in and give them free accounts. But one of the guys that I talked to, and again, it's only a one-off, but he told me that it costs several $1,000s just to take the test and go through. But they have to learn English was the other thing that the guy forgot this morning. They have English as part of the protocol to become a citizen. And that was a major barrier for a lot of people. But again, the money, it's like, if the guy I'm talking about is in line, it's about $5,000 just to go through the process. And so I think what we should do is there shouldn't be a fee. You know, if they can pass everything else, then we should just, let them learn English.
I feel like we have to deconstruct. We have to ask ourselves, and thank you, Skip, I'm a little bit short on time. We have to ask ourselves some very serious questions about what we need in terms of immigration. We need to put the United States of America first in that regard. But the first thing we have to do is shut everything down right now. We have to remove those bad actors that have come into this country to take advantage of this country. We have to do a grand reset. I have called for an elimination on all new immigration to the United States of America for a calendar year in order to reset where we are in immigration and to discover what we need in terms of those companies that claim that they need migrant labor in order to function. It's 31. My apologies to Ken Weaver for getting him off his time. It's 31 after the hour on Super Talk.
Got a crash right now westbound I-40 at Fessler's Lane. That's going to be just east of downtown, trying to get to downtown. That injury crash is blocking the left 2 lanes there at 40 westbound. We got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Right now in Florida,
we have over 1,100 personnel so far across the federal government supporting the preparedness efforts for this storm. We also have an additional 700 personnel from FEMA that are already in these states supporting other disasters that we can quickly pivot to support any of the response needs as needed.
That's FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell on the pending arrival of Hurricane Helene. Currently a Cat 3 with 120-mile-per-hour winds expected to make landfall after 10 o'clock tonight. A swiftwater rescue team from Tennessee is in Florida to help with search and rescues and recovery. And right now in our nation's capital, Democratic Colorado Congressman Jason Crow's opening remarks during the first bipartisan task force investigating the Trump assassination attempts.
We must be united in our belief as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats, that political disagreement is settled through rigorous debate, not violence.
Elsewhere in D.C.,
the Ukrainian president met with senators from both parties, seeking their support for strikes deep inside Russia. South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said he agrees with Volodymyr Zelensky.
If he could start executing that plan, that gives us the best hope of ending this war in 2025.
But Graham's fellow Republicans are increasingly accusing Zelensky of election interference, pointing to his recent trip to a munitions factory in Pennsylvania without Republicans in tow.
What happened in Pennsylvania was a mistake.
Well, and yet Vladimir Putin warning that what President Zelensky wants could lead him to use Russian tactical nuclear weapons. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
When it comes to protecting yourself and protecting your family, there's only one Nashville Safe House, and really only one in Nashville, only one in Middle Tennessee, only one in Tennessee, only one in the Southeast, and only one in the United States. And if they're the best in the United States, did you know that makes Nashville Safe House the best safe company in the universe? It's true. It's true. They are really good at what they do. I mean, Mark and his team, they have developed the connections that make sure that they have a safe available for you right there in stock. They have individuals ready to deliver your safe that are employed by Nashville Safe House, meaning they don't use third-party vendors from people who grab folks off the street to deliver your safe. You don't want unknowns in your home. I mean, who's delivering your safe? You want to know that Nashville Safe House is delivering your safe. Plus, they got great prices. They've got great rebates. They've got great bargains, and they have a safe for you. Size, no matter. They've got big, they've got small, they've got medium size. They've got vault doors. They've got everything at Nashville Safe House. Go to NashvilleSafeHouse.com to find out more. NashvilleSafeHouse.com, or stop by and see them across the street from City Cemetery, worth the drive from anywhere on 4th Avenue South. It's the one and only Nashville Safe House. Dr. Stephen Poss wants to introduce you to Dr. Brian McLaughlin, and I would like to do the same. Dr. Stephen Poss has been for years now helping people just like you, just like me, with your sleep apnea issues, your TMJ solutions. And they continue to grow with the addition of Dr. Brian McLaughlin on the team. He has the same exceptional credentials as Dr. Stephen Poss. You know, for those of us who cannot wear a CPAP machine, and I consider myself among your number, that have moderate to mild sleep apnea, there is an FDA-approved device, one that I have in my home, that gently supports your jaw, helps you breathe better. I would compare it to putting in a football mouthpiece. If you've ever played ball and you know those mouthpieces, I mean, they're inobtrusive. They don't bother you at all. You get used to it immediately, and you fall to sleep, and you sleep so much better because you're able to breathe. You're not waking up in fits and starts throughout the course of the night. You have more energy throughout the course of the day. They're in network with BCBS, Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, Medicare, and they're a preferred provider for TRICARE for our military as well. 2 locations to serve you. One's in Brentwood, the other in Murfreesboro. Go to drposs.com to find out more. That's drposs.com. Hey, we're giving away a couple of additional, I'm going to this C10 Nationals event that is happening at Nashville Super Speedway October 4th and 5th. I'm very excited about it. It is the world's largest Chevrolet and GMC event. You don't have to ride a Chevrolet or a GMC to go, but if you want to register your truck, you need to do so online at ctnationals.com. That's ctnationals.com. Or you can have a spectator ticket. They're just $25 a day. Parking is free. So autocross, a swap meet, there's a vendor midway, drag racing, track cruise. Look for me. I'll be there all afternoon. I'm the guy in the hat. Just look for the guy in the hat, and that'll be me. It's at ctnationals.com. But you don't have to buy a ticket when I will give you what do we got? Two sets?
Sure.
2 sets of 2, baby, right now. 615-737-9986. I'll give stuff away as long as they let me. 615-737-9986. So real quick, I want to share this with you. This might not get the play that Karine Jean-Pierre is getting today because she made something of an ass of herself during her press conference, or Kamala Harris from last evening with Stephanie Ruhle, that little softball. Janet Yellen, we're facing inflation unlike the likes of which we've not seen in years and years. By the way, I should have said those tickets are either for Friday or Saturday, the 4th or the 5th of October. I failed to mention that. Friday or Saturday, the 4th or the 5th of October. That's when the C10 Nationals will be at the Nashville Super Speedway. Okay. CNBC sat down with Janet Yellen, our current Treasury Secretary, and asked her if she had any regrets over the influx of money from the federal government, made up money that caused inflation. Listen in.
Over the course of the pandemic and its aftermath, given what happened to inflation, not having reduced spending so that you weren't adding to that inflation?
Look, I think at the outset of the administration, we felt that the largest single risk facing our economy was that people would not get back to work in a timely way, and we could be faced with a real crisis of high unemployment with substantial scarring. And we put in place with Congress a program that was meant to address that risk.
In other words, the woman just said no. Understand the answer not given was the answer. No. Do you regret the trillions of dollars in spending that economists across the board agree contributed mightily to the prolonged inflationary crisis that we're currently experiencing under Joe Biden and, by extension, Kamala Harris? And the answer was no, we don't regret it one bit. We want more dependence on the government of the United States of America, obviously. In the meantime, they're claiming victory on inflation. Listen to her other answer on CNBC.
There's no question that inflation has been a problem. It remains the top priority of our administration to address the high cost of living that burdens households. But inflation now is down considerably, and real wages adjusted for inflation, are rising so that families are getting ahead.
Why do I not trust this person? I mean, there was a time when I would trust the Secretary of the Treasury. I would trust these economic minds from the Federal Reserve back in the day. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I was being naive. But there was a time when I trusted them. I don't trust them anymore. All right, I promised that I would get to a few of these. Trump on tariffs from last evening's discussion. By the way, did you see where the New York Times referred to in discussing the sit-down softball between Kamala Harris and Stephanie Ruhle? They said it elicited few details, that she offered roundabout responses that did not provide a substantive answer, and a hard-hitting Harris interview is still yet to come. That's from the New York Times. When the New York Times slams your interview as a softball, well, you kind of know that your interview was something of a softball. But Kamala Harris says that we need to get serious about these things, that one must be serious.
And one must be serious and have a plan, and a real plan that's not just about some talking point ending in an exclamation at a political rally, but actually putting the thought into what will be the return on the investment and what will be the economic impact on everyday people.
Has she a plan in place for the nation's economy? If she has, I've not heard it. I know that she swiped a few things for, I know she swiped a few things from Donald Trump's plan. There you go.
I can't wait for that technology, baby.
That's a pie in the sky. I mean, come on. Don't promise things you can't keep, Kamala. What are you doing? She lied to Stephanie Ruhle. Stephanie Ruhle did not fact check her on the job creation of Donald Trump. Complete lie. Let me just let you listen to it. She claims
most likely voters still think Donald Trump is better to handle the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, here's what I know in terms of the facts. Donald Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression when you look at, for example, the employment numbers.
It was during
thank you, Stephanie.
And employment was so high because we shut down the government, we shut down the country.
Even before the pandemic, he lost manufacturing jobs by most people's estimates, at least 200,000.
Complete lie. Donald Trump created 414,000 manufacturing jobs during his first 38 months as president of the United States of America, okay? That's 414,000, and that is absent COVID-related shutdowns. Kudos to Stephanie Ruhle for bothering to state the obvious, and that was the last year of the Trump administration was hampered by the state-by-state shutdowns and the elimination of jobs as a result of that. Kamala Harris just lies to the American people and suggests that what we all know is so wasn't so. In the meantime, Stephen is in Paris, wants to talk about the VP debate. Hello, Stephen.
Oh, hey, man. Caught me off guard, man. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Hey, yeah. I think Kamala's economic plan is to sell out to China. But, on this VP debate, man, I wish I could make it out there with you guys. I'm going to be there sooner or later. It's just I'm a truck driver, so I'm all over the world. But, I just want
can I ask you a quick question, Steven?
Yeah, man.
You mind?
No.
What are you having right now? What are you eating?
Oh, it's a tortilla.
Oh man, sounds good.
Yeah.
Bring us one, would you?
Rice.
Sammy,
rice and
Sammy, our new employee here at Super Talk, Sammy, she's interested in a tortilla. If you wouldn't mind, just bring her one down, would you?
I will, man. I'll send a whole platter of tortillas and a bouquet of flowers.
Oh, and that's she just touched her heart, Steve. That's very sweet. Anyway, I didn't mean to. Well, we'd love to have you. Why can't you come down, man?
Yeah, hey. But the punchline, what I was going to get at was, the last two lines in our national anthem is the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave, right? So this guy Waltz, man, he's everything we've seen from him. There's nothing brave about this guy. He's not representing our country at all. And I would be scared, even if Kamala did win and she was impeached, I would be scared for that guy to take our country over because, I think he's more of a wuss than she is. But I just hope Vance smokes him, man, and calls him out on all
Well, we're going to find out together. We would love to see you, Stephen. And if you cannot be there, you can listen on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be at Hop Springs in Murfreesboro for the duration, starting with Brian Wilson and the drive at 3. The whole gang will crank up at about 6. We'll horn in on the last hour of Wilson's show. And then we've got an hour of pre-debate coverage on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Fox Nation's coming out. I could name some of the names, but you wouldn't believe me. Ken Weaver's coming out. Dan Mandis is going to be there. Chris Hand is going to be there. The aforementioned Mr. Wilson, yours truly. The entire gang will be present and accounted for. Come on out and see us. Hop Springs in Murfreesboro. I would say this to your call, Stephen, and to your point. The last line of the Star Spangled Banner is a question. It's not a statement. It's a question. And I want to remind people of that as much as I possibly can. I talk about this during the show often. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? That's a question. Does it still wave? It's important that we recognize that we have to answer that question on a daily basis. We have to answer that question on a weekly and monthly and yearly basis. We have to answer that question every time a presidential election rolls around. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? It was waving over Fort McHenry. Thank God, as Francis Scott Key asked the question. And every day we better be dedicated to continue to see it wave in the greatest country on God's green earth. Back in a moment with a visit from Brian Wilson after this. Boo! Boo! Puppy died. You killed a puppy. watching the end of a performative press conference with Vice President Kamala Harris and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as we join in that break there, and wrapping up the show with a visit from Brian Wilson to find out what is happening on the drive this afternoon. Good afternoon, Brian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. I think we're going to start off by deconstructing in a really detailed way whatever the hell Kamala Harris said in that interview with Stephanie Ruhle.
Man,
I mean, it's a lot of platitudes, but every time I hear her speak in what is supposed to be an interview, I walk away with more questions than I have answers. So we'll get into that a little bit. More details on the assassination attempt. There is a new development in that story that you haven't heard probably, so you want to hang around for that in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll, of course, be keeping an eye on Helene and the local impacts of that hurricane as it moves into our area after it hits the coast later today. And Trump has an afternoon presser scheduled at about 3:30 our time. We'll be watching to see what's on his mind for that. All that and the Three Amigos. I mean, that's a full.
That is a
show.
Packed show, Brian Wilson.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I don't want to ask that you unveil some of the storyline that you'll be covering in the 3 o'clock hour. But for me, I watched this thing last night, and I came away, and I consistently feel this when she's in unscripted moments. She's like a less polished, less substantive Barack Obama. I mean, she talks in these ways that don't tend to make a lot of sense, but she acts in a fashion which suggests to me that she thinks she's making some incredible point that all of us should applaud her for.
Yeah, I know. She speaks in platitudes, in vague concepts,
Wow,
well, she's unburdened by the past, because she doesn't want to talk about the past. We can all understand why. Have you seen our economy lately? But I mean, if she's got the answer on the economy, then why have we been through everything that we've been through with this administration? Because clearly she had the answers all along. We just didn't understand, apparently.
Well, apparently not.
Yeah,
I imagine so. Well, we'll be looking forward to that. Brian Wilson is on the way next, right after Ken Weaver's newscast. And Ken Weaver's newscast is happening right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be back with you for a First Amendment Freestyle Friday, cranking up at high noon tomorrow. Should enjoy that. Maybe, just maybe, we'll give you a breakdown and analysis of Georgia, Alabama, because I know all of you are anxiously anticipating that. I kid, actually. We'll break down everything that's going on with the afternoon press conference this afternoon with Donald Trump and continue to keep you up to date with what's happening with Helene, which apparently is going to dump a tremendous amount of rain across parts of Tennessee. It remains to be seen how much and where, but most of us will get some wet stuff over the next several days. Until tomorrow at high noon, friends, have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the drive. Hug your loved ones. So long, everybody.